Hello, everyone. Welcome or welcome back to Dirty Martini. I hope you're having an amazing day. I'm currently just fresh out of the airport, and after a long and exhausting day, I'm finally enjoying my absolutely essential post travel floor time. So I decided to take you along with me and let's just have some floor time together. So I'm finally back in the Netherlands after a few weeks being at home in sunny and warm Bulgaria. I am so not ready to go back to constant overcast, rain, and wind. I know I complain about the weather quite a lot, but it really has become such a fundamental factor which affects my overall mood and well-being that I just cannot ignore it anymore. For the last 3 weeks, I wore tank tops and shorts, and now I'm back to hoodies and jackets. And let me tell you, that is not a fun transition. I just hope I don't get sick, because that's usually what happens when I change scenery so drastically. And now, I just don't have the time to be sick. I cannot afford to get sick. Now you may wonder, what do you mean when you say you have no time to be sick? Like, huh? Okay, hear me out, everybody. During my floor time, I actually was planning on just chilling because I'm exhausted after traveling. But I just looked at the student portal of my university, which I know, a rookie mistake. And what I saw there made me so mad that I no longer can relax and then later go to bed. I am wide awake, I am enraged, and I need to complain to get it out of my system. So I promise I won't ramble on for too much, and we'll go back to what I actually wanted to share with you in just a second. But first, what do I mean when I say I have no time to be sick? So my frustration with university from last week continues. No, actually, it's even been exacerbated. Why, you ask? I will tell you. So, unlike the rest of the university, people in our degree are only given 2 months to write our thesis instead of 4. That is conducting research and writing it all up in 10,000 words in just 2 months. If you think that's reasonable, think again. And if you think that's what's pissing me off the most, think again. Like, fine, I can push myself and can do the thesis in 2 months. Actually, I'm supposed to submit the first full draft in a month, so technically I have a month to do it. Will that stress me out of this universe? Absolutely. Will I hate every single second of life between the current moment of this recording and the moment I finally press submit assignment? You bet. But what is pissing me off so extremely much is that for whatever reason, the faculty decided that this is not enough work to do for 2 months. Those geniuses decided that we should also have classes in the meantime, and not only have classes with mandatory attendance, but have weekly assignments, have an essay to submit, which is due the date of the thesis, and also a group project, which is due a week after the thesis. Let's unpack this for a second. First of all, you're giving me just a block to write my thesis instead of an entire semester like the rest of the university because you wanted us to, and I quote, just quickly get it done with. Second of all, you're forcing us to go to mandatory classes while we are supposed to be doing the research, and if we don't go to those classes, we don't meet our attendance criteria and cannot graduate? Did I also mention that those classes are very late in the afternoon, which is Even more annoying because I will have to schedule my entire days around a 2-hour class that they decided to plop in the most inconvenient time. Third of all, you want me to write an essay and submit it the same day and the same hour my thesis is due? I'm sorry, am I not supposed to focus on the most important assignment of my entire degree? And finally, who the heck assigns group projects which are worth 50% of your grade a week after you have submitted your thesis? Like, isn't the thesis the last thing you're supposed to do? Isn't everything else insignificant in comparison to the assignment of your degree? It genuinely makes no sense to me. I know I shouldn't complain about this. And there are far worse things in life and more important things to worry about. But I'm just so pissed right now. Because there was no consideration put into any of this. I promise you, I, as an individual, can create a more considerate, less stressful, and overall better schedule than apparently the entire faculty can together. So they can piss off. I am so going to Karen this and write a strong worded feedback at the end of the semester when they ask us for course evaluations. Just wait and see. If there is one thing I can do in this world, it is complain. Okay, that felt good. Now that this is taken off from the to-do list, let's go back to today's topic. In this episode, I want to talk to you about my relationship with traveling. And just to reiterate, I mean traveling, not vacationing. Considering that I just landed, you can imagine where that inspiration came from. Finally, I made it back to the Netherlands. I actually traveled for only 12 hours this time, which is so little compared to the usual 16. Don't ask me, I don't know where the other 4 hours went. Before you argue and say, that's such a ridiculous amount of time to travel from Bulgaria to the Netherlands, because that's usually what people say. Oh, it's just a 3-hour flight away, which is the case if you live in Sofia and Amsterdam is the endpoint of your trip. But let me just remind you that in neither country I live in a city with an airport, so there are an extra 3 hours added to get to the airport in Bulgaria and roughly 3.5 hours to get from the airport in the Netherlands to my city. I think it's really ridiculous and funny that my American friend gets home faster than I do, considering that she flies over the ocean and I just go to the other side of the continent, but hey, what can you do? Today's trip was actually not only shorter than usual, it was overall so much more pleasant than my usual traveling experience. The reason is because when I was at the station waiting for my train to my city, I stumbled upon one of my closest friends here. Neither of us knew we were traveling the same day and the same hour, so it was such a nice surprise, and we did the train portion of our traveling together, and that was just so nice and enjoyable. I'm sorry, but what are the chances of this actually happening? Well, apparently big enough because it did happen, but you know what I mean. That was just so crazy and unexpected, but it filled me with such joy. So, considering that today's trip was both short and pleasant compared to the usual, I think my curse might have been broken. You now may wonder, what do you mean a curse? Well, let's focus on this for a bit now. I am a cursed traveler. Every time I travel, everything that can go wrong does. So, if you ever decide to go on a trip with me, consider yourself warned. Also, let me just quickly mention that if we are to travel together, I love you, but I am not paying the extra 8 euros to sit next to you. Yes, I am cheap. And if that's a test that our friendship cannot withstand, what are we even doing traveling together? If I pay the extra 8 euros so that we can sit together, there are two options. You are either the love of my life and I want to spend every single second of my life with you and cannot stand the idea of being apart from you for even 3 hours, or I feel so uncomfortable around you that I feel like I cannot say no to paying that 8 euros, and there's just no in between. Have fun figuring out which scenario applies to us. Also, if we were to do it, pay the extra 8 euros and sit next to each other, that would mean that either of us is sitting in the middle seat. Why would I want us to start a trip off on the wrong foot by sentencing one of us in the middle? Speaking of, let me tell you what my thought process is behind choosing seats on a plane. I only sit in the window in 2 instances. When I'm going to a new place and would like to look at the scenery, or when it's really early in the morning and I can lean my head on the wall and fall asleep. In any other case, I believe in aisle seat supremacy. Aisle seats give you more room, and if, God forbid, you have to go to the lavatory, which is something I personally avoid as the plague, you don't need to ask people to stand up so that you can go. As for middle seat passengers, rest in peace to our fallen soldiers. Life is already too hard on you, which is why I believe that if you're in the middle seat, the 2 armrests are your birthright, and you should fight for them as if your life depended on it. Push if you need to. Be mean, be aggressive, be assertive. Those armrests are yours. If you're sitting in an aisle or a window seat and you're taking the armrest from the middle seat passenger, I want you to know that you are the worst type of person on this planet. I don't want to be associated with you in any time and place, and you should get off the plane immediately. Even if it's midair, I don't care. You don't deserve to be there. That's the etiquette, and I accept no objections. But now, let's circle back. I need to explain what I mean when I say I'm a cursed traveler. And I think it would be best to explain this with an example. This curse came into action the very first time I traveled back home from the Netherlands. And it just decided to set in and never leave. Let me paint the picture. It was December 21st, 2021. And yes, I remember the date because it was such a traumatizing moment in my life that I don't think I'll ever be able to forget it or come to terms with it. So I'm traveling back home for Christmas, and you already know that the weather is terrible. I haven't mentioned it once or twice. There was a lockdown in the Netherlands still because, well, the pandemic. And my flight was actually on the 22nd around 8 a.m. But because there were no trains running that early to take me to the airport in the morning, I had to go from the night before and wait at the airport for a few hours, which, no problem. But now if you're asking, why didn't you book a place to stay at for the night? Let me tell you that I had a total of 40 euros, so that was completely out of the picture. Also, I thought that staying at the airport overnight won't be that bad, like people do it all the time. Boy, was I wrong. Imagine my surprise when, after a 3.5 hour train ride, I arrive around midnight-ish at the airport just to see that it was closed. Okay, that's really dumb of me, but I honestly thought that all airports are open 24/7 because that's how it is in Bulgaria. So I was wrong. The Eindhoven airport closes from midnight until 4:30 a.m. There was no way for me to go back to the train station because it was also closed. I took the last train and the station closes after the last train arrives. And there was altogether nowhere to go because everything was closed because pandemic. I need to mention that I had been holding in my pee the entire train ride because just like I want to use plane toilets, I want to use train toilets. And the toilet at the train station was also closed because it only works until 8 p.m. or something like this. So my only option was to go to the airport. And that option, no pun intended, went down the drain. My bladder, I felt like was about to burst, and I was in so much physical pain, I just wanted to cry. So I end up finding this hotel, which is close to the airport, and I go up there and ring the reception on the intercom multiple times until they pick up. I beg them to use the bathroom, but they tell me that they don't want to let me in. First, because of lockdown, and second, because if they did it, they would have to do it for everyone else, which, whatever. So I beg and beg and beg and promise that I will be super quick and they won't even notice I'm there. And eventually they felt sorry for me and let me in. That was the fastest pee I've taken in my life to date. And then I was out of the hotel because them letting me wait in the reception until my flight was just out of question. So I am out in the night in a city I don't know, having to wait 4 more hours in the cold, in the wind, in the rain until the airport opens. I was freezing, but there was no way for me to put on more clothes because my luggage was vacuum sealed. And if I opened it to grab a pair of socks, for example, I would not have been able to close my suitcase again. So I sat at this bench in front of the airport's entrance and binged a few episodes of The Office on my phone. You know, things in life are not going great when even Michael Scott cannot make me laugh. And then my phone started rapidly dying because of me binging and because of the cold, so I stopped using it altogether. Now, if you've never been in a similar situation, which for your sake I hope is the case, let me just tell you that airports are sketchy places at night, especially when you're not inside them, but wait outside. I got particularly scared when I noticed that rats are running around the bench I was just sat on, and I wanted to cry so bad, but I physically couldn't. Apart from the fact that my body was completely frozen, I wasn't drinking any water because I didn't want to have to pee again because they wouldn't have let me in the hotel a second time. So I was so dehydrated that I didn't have enough fluids in me to be able to cry. After a while, I noticed that some people were going in and out of the airport's parking lot. So I decided to follow them and check out what's going on there. Now, looking back, those are very brave actions, and I could have easily been killed, and I'm really thankful I wasn't. However, what follows is, I don't know if it's better than death. So I entered the staircase of the parking lot, and I see a dozen of people sitting in the stairs, sharing my faith of being stranded. I go up some flights and find a few free stairs and practically lay on them. It was so freezing cold. It was probably even colder than it was outside. That parking lot was exactly what you would imagine an airport parking lot would look like. Concrete and pipes. It was so windy inside because the doors couldn't close properly. So that was fun. I dozed off for a few minutes, but my entire body was cramping because of the cold, and the pain was so unbearable that I just couldn't handle it anymore. I stood up to walk a little bit to get my blood circulation going, but every single movement was causing me more pain. So I decided to sit down again, and that is when my body literally shut down. It was like I started hibernating. I woke up, I don't even know how long after, and everything felt like a fever dream. And the only thing I could focus on was that one banana someone had put on top of one of the pipes, which was hanging from the ceiling 4 meters above the ground. How they got it there, I don't know. And to be honest, I'm not sure I want to know. But waking up in a staircase, being completely frozen, and this is the first thing you see, is an interesting experience, to say the least. Imagine it like in the movies, like when people who are on their deathbed or have been significantly wounded and they wake up and see the ghost of their friend, of their lover, of God, and that spirit gives them hope and power to continue. It gives them the promise that they will survive. That is how I felt about this banana. It was my Lord and Savior. It was my hope. When I saw it, I was weirded out, indeed. But I knew I was going to survive, even if I survived and lived just to tell that story. So, some more time passes, and it's finally 4:30 a.m., and the airport is about to open. It took me, I kid you not, more than 5 minutes to walk the 60 meters from the parking lot to the airport because I genuinely could not move. Need I say that when I got back home to Bulgaria, after that literal hypothermia I had just had, I was sick and was on antibiotics for a month, and I couldn't speak and had difficulties breathing and just overall had an amazing Christmas. That was such a terrible experience that every time I would fly from Eindhoven or to Eindhoven, I would go to that parking lot to look at the banana and remind myself of that experience, and also remind myself that if things in life are bad, at least I don't have to live through this again. Okay, I did have to do it once again a few months later, but that time I was prepared because I had so many layers of clothes on that I didn't at least have frostbite. I was really sad when last year I went to check on the banana and saw that it wasn't there anymore. I think that maybe they have seen me on their camera footage and how I religiously go to the parking lot for 2 minutes every time I travel, check on a specific pipe, and then enter the airport. So, banana, wherever you are, whoever took you, I will always and forever carry you in my heart. Rest in peace, babe. Rest in peace. That entire experience encapsulates the curse. It set the tone for all my travels from the Netherlands to Bulgaria and from Bulgaria to the Netherlands. Every single time things would go ridiculously wrong. But just like AJR said, 100 bad days make 100 good stories, and 100 good stories make me interesting at parties. Like, just now, 3 weeks ago, when I traveled again from the Netherlands to Bulgaria again, I had to ride an electric bike in the pouring rain and hail because there were no buses and my GPS made me go on the highway and cars started beeping at me because I'm not allowed to be on the highway with a bike. And then I parked the bike in the wrong place and couldn't restart it from the app, so I had to carry it to the correct parking spot, which, if you've never had to carry an electric bike whose wheels are not rotating because they've been locked, it is heavy. And then I went into the airport, bought some tea to warm myself up, and burnt my entire mouth, and it was covered in blisters for days. And then at security, they inspected my luggage further because they thought I was carrying something illegal, which I wasn't. And then I had the most turbulent flight of my entire life, and that trip in total took me 37 hours. Or thinking back at the time, I walked for over 3 hours through the entire city of Hamburg, from the airport to the central station, because I couldn't figure out how to work with the public transportation, and the entire city was under reconstruction. And to this day, one of my wheels on my suitcase is so squeaky, it's unreal, and it's really annoying. So, fun stuff. What can I say? That is usually the overall vibe of when I travel. And my family gets so worried every time I travel because they know if something can go wrong, it will. Literally yesterday, when I went to say bye to my grandparents, my grandpa said, "I am praying to God that you have a safe and overall easy travel experience, not like the one you had coming in here." Maybe that is why today's trip wasn't bad at all. It was probably one of the easiest ones I've had, so shout out to my grandpa. Your prayers have been heard and fulfilled. I will be calling you every time before I go on an airplane from now on because I cannot risk it anymore. Now that I'm thinking about it and looking back, I actually see the foreshadowing of my relationship with traveling. When I was probably 5, I don't remember exactly, my parents took their first trip by plane, and my sister and I stayed with our grandparents while they were gone. That was the first time someone within my immediate reach flew somewhere, so as a child, you can imagine that I was so terrified because I had no concept of traveling by plane. Also, I had just watched a movie where the plot revolved around a plane crash, so just perfect timing. I was hysterically crying, thinking that my parents' plane would crash and I would never see them again. In my mind, they just paid to go on vacation just to never return again, and I honestly thought that they had left me and my sister behind. And to make things worse, my sister decided to console me by saying something along the lines of, "You know, there's a higher chance of them getting into a car crash on the way to the airport than actually crashing while on the plane, right?" Wow, that had never occurred to me, so thank you for this enlightening information. Now, my panicking is doubled, so thank you very much. Why would she say this? As you can imagine, I didn't feel consoled. I didn't feel relieved. Now I was actually worrying that my parents are going on a death trip, both on the road and in the air. So thank God they came back in one piece and actually had a fun trip. I don't think I've ever been that happy and relieved to see them. Also, looking at my own first plane trip, I now see that it also signaled that traveling and I will have a love-hate relationship. Flying back from our trip, men with guns started yelling at me, but I didn't know English very well at that point in life. So I panicked so bad. Me and my limited English knowledge, me and my 12-year-old brain thought that those men wanted to arrest me and I would not be able to go back home. The besties just wanted me to take off my shoes. Anyways, so maybe traveling and I are not destined to be best friends. Don't get me wrong, I love traveling and I feel very privileged to have the opportunity to do it as often as I do. I don't take it for granted. Traveling recharges me so much. Seeing new places and meeting new people is so beautiful. I love exploring, gaining experience, gaining new knowledge, making memories, having fun. But traveling is so exhausting when you're born under a star which has destined you to have the worst luck when traveling. I don't know what I've done to deserve this luck or to invite this energy, but it's making me hate traveling and hate flying, and I want to love them. So I am beyond grateful that today's trip was so chill. I'm not taking it for granted, believe me. Again, shout out Grandpa. And hopefully, I'm not jinxing myself when saying that, but I hope it broke the curse and I can travel calmly now. Hopefully, in the future, I'll have fun stories to tell from my travel experiences which are not as traumatizing as the ones I've had so far. That being said, thank you for joining me during my floor time. I am starving, so I'll go make some boda carbonara noodles and watch Sex and the City because I saw it's on Netflix now and I've been meaning to watch that series for forever. I will let you know what I think of it once I finish it. But until then, I hope you enjoyed this episode and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye!